that's a triple play. New episodes, I couldn't wait. Yeah, open your mind at the first gate. Press play, no need to debate. AoA, check me out. Look, plugged in, you can catch the hype. Golden Dawn, how we follow the light. Anime like life, married to it, my wife.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all ages? Welcome back to the AoA show. I'm your host, as always, Ian, along with my boys, Isaiah.
Yo.
And Gavin.
What's going on?
And today we're here to provide you with our deep dive analysis on the God of High School, episode 11. A lot of God stuff going on, a lot of God stuff this episode, so exciting to talk about it. I thought it was pretty hype personally, and I'm excited to talk about what some of the behind-the-scenes things are now that that's like the thing, right? Because at the end, they're like, all right, tournament's off, it's over. So anyway, cool stuff to get into, but if you guys enjoy the content today, make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, hitting that notification bell, sharing with your friends, and commenting your thoughts down below. What did you think of this episode? What do you think of GOH so far? And what did you think of our discussion? Make sure you guys are referring to the description for links for our social media, as well as our Patreon and Discord. And make sure you guys are checking us out on the audio-only platforms at Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, etc. if you need to listen to us on the go. But anyway, let's hop into it. So we have Elpio and Jinmori, who are still brawling it out. Elpio has awakened the fox now. So we finally, and okay, this for me was a long time coming, but you might argue that it's like, well, they've kind of been giving you a little, trail of crumbs here along, and fair enough. But I feel personally this one actually solidified for me the goal and the reason for the goal, at least more so than previous explanations in terms of Nox versus Park. And that is that the Ninetales, they go through the story, used to be the guardian of God, like the god of gods, essentially, warded off any attackers, the whole nine, but he's incredibly powerful. And you know how the story goes, essentially, X person in power, this time God, is like, he's getting a little too strong for my liking, even though he's done a lot for me. So I think I'm going to betray him and screw him over, So he attempts to do that, obviously fails in doing so. The fox destroys half of heaven before he is eventually quelled and basically goes to sleep. And he's still kind of holding a grudge about it. So he's like, when I wake up, I'm killing God and the rest of heaven. So we realize that, that fox now inhabits Elpio. So he's using that against Jinmori. Now, Jinmori, I was saying when we were reacting to this, we all knew he was actually broken, just in terms of his strength and all this stuff, but he's broken. He's freaking broken because he's able to fight him, assumedly not fully tapping into his Chariok, for a couple minutes, while Elpio is in this Ninetales state, which, is touted to be the key. So that in and of itself was pretty damn impressive. I mean, he is getting kind of mollywopped the entire time. It's not like he's winning per se, but the fact that he's living, or not being, knocked out is impressive to say the least. But we realized that, Elpio can't control this power, at least not for too long. So it seems that he's not even fully aware of the ins and outs and everything that's going on with it. So I don't know. What'd you guys think of the fight, that is, or any sort of talking points during it?
I mean, the fight was dope. Oh, excuse me, my throat. What am I doing? No, but the fight was dope. You can't complain. They're actually delivering on cool animation and, sick shit going on. So, oh my God. It's weird. I don't know. But either way, it was nice finally actually getting a reason for everything that's been going on, because that's been one of the bigger stipulations in terms of keeping not only my attention span in the ring, but just even my interest in the show, because we this whole time we're watching, we don't know the reason for anything going on. There's Chariok, there's cool shit happening, but for what purpose? And now we're getting more insight on said purpose. And it's finally starting to bring, it's starting to connect the dots. And I appreciate that. And it makes it more bearable to watch the show. And when it's accompanied now by more storyline and dope fights, now we're starting to move in a direction that I like. Mm-hmm. So I can say that I can deal with it, and I'm enjoying it, and I hope they keep on steering it in this direction where it's more plot with more action and storytelling along with it.
Yeah.
So I do like it though.
Yeah, interesting stuff. We also find out that Mori, at least I'm going on a whim here, Jin Mori is the god that they've been referring to, or
taps into that
at least is borrowing that power. Yeah. Now, I could be wrong there, but kind of seemed like it because he kind of, laid the hurt on Elpio once he finally unlocked his Chariot. So all of his moves, his abilities, it's like, it's not going to cut it now, dude. We've hit the next stage. You got to do something more than that. You got to have another trick up your sleeve. And Jin Mori delivers, and essentially, once the eyes turn, it's like, right? So they go blue. He basically summons this like tempest, and it's interesting because he doesn't necessarily take on like this other physical form, or it's not like, the jester that's like X height and is behind him, or even the dragon or whatever. It's literally like God in the heavens, God. You know what I mean? Like, doesn't even make an appearance down besides just a swatting hand, really, which is kind of insane, and also reminded me of Mugen, in the sense that he's able to, he was able to flatten that island in the beginning. So I think there's something to be said about, I don't know if it's just Jin Mori that can control that or borrows his power from that god specifically. Like if there are more people that could tap into that, maybe in a different way, etc. There's a lot of questions raised with that. But regardless, he awakens it, and is able to essentially dismantle Elpio. But now it's interesting because, again, we kind of get, now that we have a little bit more of this backstory, we understand, okay, here's the key. Here's potentially God in Jin Mori. That's my prediction. How is now, because Park and gang, or Mugen Park and gang, are like, we need this to destroy God, while, the people in the cult are like, we need this key to be destroyed so it can't destroy God, essentially, because it's the only one that can put up a fighting chance. So it's interesting because we have this like budding rivalry set up between Jin Mori and Elpio, but you know what I mean? Like, I think it's going to depend on where Elpio's allegiances lie and if he can control this power, and, what is Mugen going to do now as well? If Jin Mori is the god, that they're talking about potentially, again, I could be wrong. Like, does he not want to screw with him anymore? I don't know.
I think it is. What do you think? I don't think Jin Mori is the god. I think what it is that there's like tiers. So like, you have your, let's say like Mira and, even, well, I don't really know about Elpio. He's kind of up in the air for me. But like Mira and let's just even argue Dawi and like most of the other people that we know of in the cast that like have Chariot, and can use some sort of power, have like this sort of like, just for sake of making my point here, like tier 1, power, right? And then you have like tier 2 power, which I think like is where Park is at, and like Mori, where it's like the gods that they are connected with, or the gods that they're borrowing power from, are just on another level. And so like the scale, like, literally the scale of these gods is just, asinine compared to, like ones again, like Mira or even Elpio, who are just like on a different, just on a different playing field. And I think because like it would, I don't know, because if Mori was the god, then like I feel like Mori would have been targeted by the cult themselves, because I feel like the cult would know like that their god, the one that they, love and worship is like, some way, shape or form manifesting or his power or whatever through Mori. Plus we know that Park can use some power to the same scale and effect that Mori did. So clearly Mori's ability is not like, the one and only or incredibly unique to him. So I think I kind of feel personally like it's like like there's just different levels of gods or different levels of Chariot powers. And like, you have your Moris and your Parks who are like on another, just on a different level playing field when it comes to like, the rest of the cast.
Yeah. I think that Elpio would be considered to be among them, being that he is the
like I
key,
said, he's kind of like a wild card. I don't really know where to put him, because he like kind of, again, like stature wise, I don't really know like how to judge where he stands. Like he kind of feels like he could go that way, but like obviously if he was like tangling with God and fucked up half of heaven, he's got to be like the shit.
That's what I'm saying.
So like I don't know where the fuck that nigga goes.
Yeah,
like, he can be wherever,
I think it relates to like, the people are almost like a vessel in order to, provide for this power that has this ridiculous ability. So being that the Fox is, touted to be on that level, I think that Il Payo just by default would be on that level because, it's like, oh, well, I choose you, the god, and it's like, sick, you know what I mean? I'm up there, I made it, with X tier.
That makes logical sense, but this show does not capitalize on logical sense.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's interesting where you bring it up. And then the other thing with you were saying where Jin Mori, like, why wouldn't the Nox go after him? I don't know if they, I mean, I could be wrong here, but I don't know if they like know about him. I think they know about Taejin because he's made a name for himself. You know what I mean? It's like everyone knows Taejin at this point, at least all the top people. And
right.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Well, what I mean is when Il Payo uses his power, they're like, yo, did you feel that? That's the key.
Sure.
Yet when Moore uses power, they weren't like, oh shit, that's our god.
And
Like I feel like they would have been able to identify if it was their god, like whether they know who the person is or not. They would have known like that's
they
his
felt
signal.
it. They said something with it, but then you're right. It wasn't as much of like an
like
impact
they knew
as
Il
Fox
Payo
Awakens.
was the key. They were like, that's the key. That's like got to be the key.
Yeah, interesting. Gavin, what do you think?
No, I was gonna say because obviously Jin's also had a greater like effect. Like it was a lot. It's fucking massive. A fucking hand came down of nowhere and smacked it. Like it gave off a lot of power. I'm just more curious on how or why Jin would awaken his Chariok. So like I'm just trying to like plan out the rest of this series in my head. And obviously it's only 13 episodes and we're comparing it against the manhwa, but like for me, I almost feel like Il Payo is going to get captured by the cult in a sense.
That could make
sense.
Like
that, because right now they're really pulling heavy that these are the antagonists. Or I mean, you can make an argument that Mujin and his gang could be like this weird pseudo antagonist, like at the end of all of this. But either way, it's said. I almost feel like Il Payo has to be captured in a sense and like be close to awakening their god, and that would put everybody else's back against the wall. I'm really trying to see how they can like keep the ball rolling in terms of like what has happened, and not just stall because they can't just stall it for 400 like chapters.
You know what I kind of think?
Oh, it's a back and forth like match. Like no, like shit has to happen.
It's going to be a thing where like maybe Il Payo gets captured or somehow willingly or however it happens, somehow he ends up like going to wherever he has to go to awaken God, right? But like, and whether it's he's captured and taken by the cult, or whether he's like, no, I'm gonna go up there and kill him, or whatever. Like he goes after God, let's just say, and then like everybody, Mori and gang go after him, and like it's literally they go into like an alternate world now, like they're in the world of these gods, so to speak. And I think that's how we could continue going, through season 2. Again, I don't know.
Yeah,
makes sense.
No, that's
I'm just trying to think like if they just X this cult, is it like all right, next like on to the next?
No, and I get what you mean because like they're
thing,
good for setting up, what's happened in this season, but like we can't just run with the cult for X amount of seasons. So like there's got to be some shift in the in the literal story.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to either be captured or willingly go over, and I think that's kind of alluded to in the fact that he can't control that power fully in the sense that he can't keep it forever with the fight with Jin Mori, but also when he attacks Jegal at the end there is like out of this very blind rage with it as well, and it seemed like because the fox is supposed to be really pissed off, it makes sense, kind of the parallel with Naruto where it's like it takes over you like it's an immense amount of power, but you got to be able to control it, being that he used it as far as we know once, you know what I mean? Like he definitely doesn't have a firm grasp on how that works. So I could see that as well. I do think that if and when they make a second season of this, or in the manhwa, we're in like the God mode fights now, where it's like I think there might be still this level, like there might even be a tournament at some point. I don't know, but it's like I think it's going to be a lot of these like one-on-one. Who knows? But
the
it's
gods
like these
like have their own tournament.
Yeah, literally like Dragon Ball Super shit, like style thing, Battle for the Universe. But like I could see it escalating to that point now when it's like okay, now every individual that we fight, or at least for Jin Mori, Il Payo, things like that, are on that level. I don't know. I could be wrong.
I mean, that's what people, that at least from our comments and stuff, like that's what we know is that like as far as scaling, like it now God stuff and power levels is bottom floor.
The
now.
norm.
We're no longer at like the triple taekwondo kicking people in the face and whatever. It's like now, if you're not summoning Jesus behind you to swat a nigga into the stage, like you're not even fighting because like that's the bottom rung for combat now. But
that should be a page out of the Bible right there. Like Isaiah, like in a full. I'm like, what?
I'm pretty sure it is Isaiah 32:16.
Oh my gosh,
you guys have a change for saying that.
Wild, dude. No, but You are right in that's the floor now. You know, like the ceiling.
Oh,
has
sorry, that was a
gone-
bad segue. Like after that, you were like, "You are right."
You
I
are
was
right.
like,
I
"Wait,
have
what?"
read the Bible, and that is a direct quote. Thank you.
But yeah, anyway, so let's get into now the kind of the second part, because there was really only, you know, the fight and then Park and the
Everything else.
the Park, Mugen and the cult leader running back to race to the key, essentially, and then what happens in the room. So, you know, we get Jinmori who walks in. El Pio is essentially recovering with his friends. They have a nice chit chat. They leave the room. He's like, "Listen, dude, I got to ask you." He's like, "Yeah, about that God thing, right? Or my grandpa?" He's like, "Yeah, what's going on with grandpa?" And then kind of this whole thing gets just, you know, like the party gets crashed essentially, because now the cult leader, the Nox leader, who is just fast as lightning, apparently just got there within 10 minutes and was just like, all right, here we go. Just summons whatever he has to summon again. But not before this. What happens is, you know, the guy whose name evades me, the kid who gets chomped by the megalodon, Sharkbait. Great name. I'm calling him that now. Yeah, Sharkbait.
Man.
Essentially is possessed by something. And you were saying that you saw that his hand was screwed up before he walked and stumbled out of the bed. Is that correct?
No, he was not his. During Jinmori and Il Payo's fight, there was a scene that cut to him in his little, you know, hyperbolic time chamber, whatever the fuck you want to call it, recuperating. And there's a shot of his hand, and it looks darker than the rest of his body. But like then he has this like weird aura on him.
Gotcha.
Like,
Is this when he got hit by the light? Did he get hit by the light? Because there was like the cross and the light that happens.
Well,
when
was
transforms.
when Mori transformed.
Yeah.
He's like this energy is like
like that
can't
happened
handle this energy or
before
some shit.
the Mori thing even happened.
Okay.
This was before, and it was like cute. I was like, okay, something is going on with this dude. But then before that, Jeagle, when what's his name? Il Payo. My God, when Il Payo, you know, had just awakened, or not just awakened, but like after awakening to his Chariot, had like the fucking, you know, something was going on with his hand.
Well, he said it was his
Chariot was resonating, and I'm like,
yes.
okay. But then when we see the dude when we see Sharkbait later, he has the same thing. So I'm like, okay, is whatever was going on with him going on also with him, because he like ate him, or
sort of? But well, the key difference though there is that Jiggles is directly correlated to his Chariot in the fact that it was tiny little spikes coming out. They were like manifesting there, whereas Sharkbait's hand was something entirely not of his own. It was like some demon arm or something that isn't his Chariot, because we saw that his Chariot has to do with like magic and shooting fireballs and shit. So that really wouldn't correlate. You know, it's considering
but I'm wondering,
what he turns
like,
into.
if because he bit him, like when he ate him or whatever you want to call it in the match, like some of his residual Chariot rubbed off on the guy, and because it resonated with Jeagle in that way, like, but it didn't work the same way with this guy, which is what caused that like weird mutation thing to happen.
Yeah, I think it's one of two things, and it may have been something we missed in the episode, because you got to remember we are reacting to this in real time and then immediately hopping into this discussion. So the probability to miss a small, minute detail is pretty high, especially when we're jumping all around and all that.
Plus,
kind
the
of
show
stuff.
doesn't exactly like double back to explain things.
So yeah, bear with me here, but I think that it is either one of two things. Is my prediction. It's either that he was, you know, essentially kind of a similar thing, Jiggle, where like in Mori transforming, his body was affected in some way, shape, or form, and he couldn't handle that power, and it kind of consumed him. Or it was that Nox had done something to him prior and basically implanted him as almost like a ticking time bomb sleeper agent in there as a contingency plan, because Mugen was like, yo, hit up Il Pio with like maximum security. Like, you guys got the key, right? I'll be back in 10. And that's when, you know, the Nox leader came there, started, you know, doing what he had to do to like, you know, sprinkle his fairy dust from heaven down. And, you know, all these fucking flies and buzzards come out. But like, I think that might have been their thing where it's like, okay, here's our thing inside to you know, to get it.
Was there ever like a scene like with Nox where like, or was there ever something that explained that like that somebody would have had contact with him, I guess.
No, that's why I'm saying this theory is really not predicated on any proof whatsoever. It's really, I'm kind of just grasping here because I didn't get anything besides potentially him being struck by the god power that would indicate why he was doing that. So those are my two predictions as to why that happened.
Because when the other thing is when Jeagle confronts the dude in the hallway or whatever of the hospital, the way he was like talking made it seem like he like sort of understood like what happened to him, but like not why it happened. Like the way, like that's what again backed up or not backed up, and this and say, but made me think more. I was like, oh, okay, it had to have been something where like they felt the same thing or the same residual effect happened to them, but because of just the way that they're made, like his body responded.
What's also interesting though too is that Jagal also has ties with Nox as well, but he's got his own like ulterior motives to it. Yeah. So even with him talking to him like that, that might be like a trick that he knows that Nox can pull as well. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
what do you think, Evan?
I mean, for me, I think it's the first thing that you said. Well, that it's that. The power, when Jin Mori transformed, the power resonated with him in the wrong way, and it overtook his body. And why I think it wouldn't be weird for Jiggle to know that is quite literally because everybody with a Cheriok and Cheriok only can feel the power when somebody is being transformed. Yeah. So like they're always going to resonate. So that probably isn't an unknown idea that bad shit can happen if someone that powerful can be transformed, if that makes sense. So I feel like just that it happened, he was like, yeah, dude, I felt that too. Like, this isn't like some obscure idea. Like this has happened before.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Interesting stuff. We'll see if that gets explained at all or not, whatever. But
probably not.
Probably not. Yeah, we're probably all wrong.
Yeah, the real thing was like, yeah, he ate like a bad taco, dude, and like he just couldn't shit, so he just turned into a devil.
Mugen tossed him a peach like he did to him in the beginning, and he's like, just eat it, see what happens. And he's like,
comes back to the fruit.
Yeah, it goes back to the fruit,
Don't
man.
eat fruit, kids.
I don't know. But anyway, so he obviously comes out and half of his body's all shot and shit. And Jagal's like, you're ugly as sin. And then fights him. And then he kind of goes, almost full into that mode. And his maid lady that his that's calling him master is like, hey, you got to come to, and then they both get stabbed, and then that's when he's like, okay, second mode activate, absorbs her, and it's like, oh dear, okay, like this guy's gonna be stronger than we had originally anticipated. And at that point, just starts going and eating everybody, while everything's going on, it's just utter chaos in there. And it was cool to see for a split second that Jagal, Jin Mori, and El Payo had to essentially team up a bit for 10 seconds to fight this thing, this common enemy. And it was like, for a second, I was like, okay, like it seemed like Jagal was getting set up to be the main antagonist, but like, I don't know if Megalodon power is up to speed with like, I summoned an army from heaven, power. And like, we kind of seem to be getting there pretty fast. So I didn't know if he was going to be like, okay, we got to team up for now. I'll fight you later. I don't know. I was, in the air. And, but, he's just steady being he's just steady being a dick because they fight the thing and they're able to overcome it, and when El Payo's friends are about to be eaten, freaking Jagal is just like fuck it and just bit them essentially, like not even caring at all. So like that was fucked up, but I mean, do we really expect anything less from that? So
I mean, it's not like you could have just did that from the beginning, but why would I say anything?
Because we need a fight, Gavin. But also,
apparently,
I'm just right now, especially with anime, dude. I've come to the conclusion, because me every time. I'm like, listen, dude, if I was a super villain, this shit would have been gone. This shit would have been done a while ago. We were talking about it with Sword Art, right? Where it was like, it's like, okay, dude, if you'd really just done this, we got to just kind of chalk it up to like they're arrogant and cocky and are like, yeah, I could only use this much of my ability to dismantle you. Listen, Gavin,
I get that, but when it's coming to a full-on one-shot, like it's one thing if there's like a back and forth and it's like, okay, there's something to it, but when you just go from a back and forth to like a, nah, bro, I had this in the bag, it's like,
yeah, to be fair, too, like, there might also be, I'm just throwing rebuttals out because, there might be something that was explained in the manhwa and just in general in terms of a show. In terms of a show, it might take him a second, like, you know what I mean, to manifest that ability where it's like giant megalodon chomp. You know what I mean? It might just not be like,
I know what you mean, but I don't think
He did do it almost instantly against that guy.
Exactly.
When he initially fought. Like the second the fight started, that shit was behind him and like,
he did shoot him with shit first, and then when he like, he had brought him back, that's when it's summoned behind him. I don't know, dude. All I'm saying is that like if he just immediately did that off the bat, we have no stakes.
Straws are banned and they're non-recyclable, so you could just stop grasping for them, bro. Like we're onto some like
Straws are
reusable shit.
banned.
Don't even. Nah, you're good. Fucking drink out of that cup without
It's all
anything.
about the
We're being environmentally friendly.
I couldn't think of a word. I'm like going in like circles trying to like come up with
You
it in my head.
love something.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Whatever. I'll take it. Like I said, I wasn't going to die on that
You know what
hill,
it is?
but
This show is like weird. It's always been weird with like power scaling.
Yeah,
Where I
yeah,
don't really know. Like it's like, all right, let's assume that Jeagle, was going at this guy, right, because of what you said, where he's like, I could like fucking, just eat him, but like, what fun would there be? I want to, show off or whatever. So I'm just gonna like throw teeth at him until he fucking gets skewered. It's like, why? This thing's like a literal like, who are you expecting praise? Like, what is the point of any of this? Only to find out that this dude is like, oh, these fucking teeth, like you see them pierce him, and you're like, oh shit, like he must have fucking got him, and he's like, nah, psych, that shit doesn't hurt at all. And then it's like, I don't know. It's hard to like measure like what ability like equates to what power, because it changes like every fight. Where it's like that, like with what's his name? The names of Ilpayo's teammates.
oh, I don't know their names. I
Alright,
totally
fair enough.
forgot. Yeah, girl and guy. Yeah.
Girl and guy.
Yeah.
Like when we like that's the other thing. I don't know like how strong anybody is in reference to anybody, because every episode there's like a new thing that like literally reestablishes or like completely sets like the foundation here. And I'm like, okay, it's just hard to like follow.
Yeah,
like,
I think, well, too, it's like we have to remember that we're trying to rationalize the mind of a literal nut job. Like Jiggle is like literally fucking insane. Jiggle, whatever his name is. Jiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Yeah, he's nuts, okay? First of all, like he just tried to drive a spike through someone's head when he didn't even meet him yet. You know what I mean? Just because he was simply conversating with a guy he's holding a grudge against. So like trying to rationalize why he's doing what he's doing, he might literally just be doing that to inflict more pain on that thing because he thinks it's fun. And to be fair, no one else in that area he gave a single fuck about at all.
Yeah,
any and all of them could have died besides Ilpayo, and he would have been totally cool with it. So like I don't think there's this like urgency, the sense of urgency where it's like, I got to end this quick. I got to pull out the huge guns immediately. Like unless you're someone else who actually has stake in it. I think for him, it's like, okay, I see what it does. Like I'm going to do my thing. It's a very anime moment, like I'd be lying if I said I hadn't seen that exact scenario play out.
No, I understand his mindset in it. That makes sense. My thing is it's strictly talking about the power scaling here.
Oh, okay.
I just don't understand like how one episode prior, like somebody will fight somebody and it's like, oh, these moves like do this and like this thing happens. And then the literal next episode is like, no, just kidding. That thing is like actually the weakest fucking thing ever. And it's like, okay, so are you telling me that the dude who he fought before was just like super, super weak? Because he like, it's hard for me to follow like who, what does what. Or, like,
I can
what
see
really
that.
means.
I actually think that's a common hot take here. I think that's actually a common problem with a lot of, I'll call them fighter animes. Take your Bakis, whatever, like Kenshiro, whatever. That is a very common problem, I feel personally, in that there are so many different fighters because you need different styles, you need different story arcs, etc. And you quite frankly just can't fit all of them into one thing. And what happens is that a lot of times, they establish someone as like, okay, this is the next guy to beat. And then they, you know what I mean? Like that guy just kind of has to bite it in a sense, or at least that's how they write it, because it's like, okay, now we need to move on to like whatever this next challenge is or like whatever. And it fucks up power scaling all the time, because I'd be lying if I said I hadn't seen this exact issue play out in other similar animes that do this. And it, not that I'm defending it at all. I think there's like probably a better way to go about it. But yeah, I think for me, when it becomes confusing and not confusing is like when it's specifically Jin Mori who's with it, because it's like, you know what I mean? Like we need to see a gradual progression with him, but it's kind of tough to gauge where he's at and like where everyone else is in relation to him, because it's like he, especially in this episode, really doesn't have a problem with not defeating, but withstanding all of the attacks from the Nine Tails in such, besides that one shot that he got him to the gut. And to be fair, that one looked like it freaking hurt, but like, you know what I mean? And then also he's like, and then he like swatted him down with like the hand of God. And it's like, yeah, your next opponent's Jegal though. And he's like, oh man, like I might lose. You know what I mean? Like there's this thing, and it's like, all right, to be fair, Jegal's up there with you guys and we haven't seen the full abilities of him yet. So yeah, you could be nervous a little bit, but like, I don't know. It makes it, I'm rambling. It's a long-winded way of saying that the power scaling can get confusing, I guess, at some points. I'm agreeing with you there. I'm not dying on that hill, as it were. But I think in this episode, and in regards to what we were talking about before in Jagal, I understand why that fight played out the way it did. You know what I mean? I wasn't there like, that was dumb. You know what I mean? I'm like, I get it. This is a very anime thing. This is a very cinema thing.
You know what it is? It's not even like, I guess I would, like, so my whole thing is that I unfortunately just kind of feel like we've gone so far into the show now, like we're already at the tail end, and I've just kind of lost like my pure level of investment. Like there's some level that's there because I want to finish the show and I want to see how at least the season, like the anime concludes. But I'm like just not as invested in the characters anymore. Like we've gotten to the the final destination or the final level battle here, right? Where it's like gods versus other gods, I guess. But like, I'm kind of just like, all right, guys, like do your thing. Let me know how it goes. Like I'm just not like I'm not there because I feel like I've kind of just been like fucking tied a rope around and just dragged through this whole season as far as like what the fuck's going on and who's trying to do what. That like by the time I'm here now, it's like I don't know. I'm like, okay, this is cool. But like
what's funny in you saying that, actually, I just had a thought. And I think this is where animes and shows as compared to their written counterparts, whether they be manga, manhwa, comics, etc., really struggle. When you have a story arc and a plot and a way of writing that plays out like the God of High School does. And so let me explain. So the God of High School has taken a route that has been taken in other things before, where they've decided to withhold a lot of information from you intentionally in the beginning in order for you to have this, okay, I need to pursue this to see what it is thing. And they kind of give you this little like M&Ms like across the floor type thing until you hit the pot of gold. And then it's like, holy shit, like this all comes together. It makes sense. And as compared to some other stories, which kind of lay it out for you in the beginning and then like see how things flesh out from there. So there's really no mystery in terms of what's going on, what's this power level. It's really like, okay, I already know this power level. How are these people going to cope with it now that I already know this? So not to relate every anime ever to Naruto, but this one, to be fair, parallels being that we're talking about the nine-tailed fox. So here's my example, right? In Naruto, it is established literally within the first 30 seconds of the show, the Nine Tails, why everyone hates him, why he hates everyone else, and why our main protagonist has him, or that our main protagonist has this spirit in him. So clearly we know now, okay, Naruto's probably going to be a pissed off kid. He's got to deal with a demon inside of him. And like, I'm going to see where this goes. Where God of High School has kind of flipped that on its head. And it's like, it is now episode 11 and we're figuring out about the Nine-Tailed Fox, the key, etc. I don't think that that's a wrong way, because it's not right or wrong. I don't think it's a wrong way or a bad way per se to write a story, but I think when you translate that to show form, it suffers, because what happens is you have to wait week to week in order to watch this shit. And for me, it's like, it's too long. We've been 11 weeks in now before we figured out what the Nine Tails is and like how it relates to our characters. Whereas in Naruto, we figured that out in the first 30 seconds. I think if you're reading the story, we just blew through 50 chapters of Noblesse in one of our last streams. I could sit there, when I was reading Berserk, I'd read it for 4 hours at a clip. You know what I mean? Like, I could picture reading a story like this or a story that does something like this and getting to that point within a fraction of the time that it takes you in waiting and watching, in a sense. Maybe not necessarily watching, but waiting in order to obtain that information. So I feel like it doesn't feel like so long of a wait and so much of a dangle for you to find out what's going on in those terms.
I think it's,
and then you can flesh it out from there.
What it is for me, because the common thing in those things that you were just saying about like comparing God to High School to stuff, other stuff like Noblesse or Berserk in your case, it's like, for me though, it's like, but you like those stories. You liked those characters. So by the time you got to the point in those stories where like the bomb was dropped, so to speak, you were already there and invested in it because of the characters. I think for me, it's like, but I'm not so worried, I guess, that God of High School took this specific approach to get there. What my thing is that in the time that it took to get there, it did nothing to make me like care about these characters. So by the time we got here to this bomb drop of information, I kind of don't really care about the characters. So I don't really care that like the stakes have changed or that like things are different now, because I'm still just as little as as invested as I was like at the beginning, which is like not a whole lot, because I don't feel like I've gone anywhere with these characters. The pacing feels so gummed up that it kind of feels like we've just been like idly bouncing from episode to episode, at least as far as like character like motivations and wants, that like by the time we get like, again, to compare stuff, we went through 50 chapters of Noblesse, but whether I had to wait 11 weeks or a day, like I like those characters. I was invested in those characters from the rip. So like by the time we got to any or get to any bomb drops, it's like, yeah, that's good to know, but like I like these characters that I'm already here. You know what I mean? Like the story already has. I feel like that's what, at least again, personally for me, God High School hasn't really done. It hasn't gotten me invested in these characters. I don't feel for what's, for what it is they want or some of them want and others, I don't know.
Yeah, fair enough. I think me personally, I'm still hanging on in there. Like I think this episode kind of for me brought it back as compared to like, the last episode where we had our thoughts, and I'm interested in seeing where it goes. Again, it's nothing for me to write home about. But I do think that they're in the grand scheme of things, and I know this is not what you were saying, so this is a separate point, but like in the grand scheme of all the episodes, there's really only been like 3 that I particularly not so much enjoyed, 4, 7, 10, and not even so much 10, more like 4, 7, in that. So I'm still there. You know what I mean? I think it's just like there's been bumps in the road. And while I'm not particularly like super invested in Mori or Mira or Dewi as much in general, I'm curious now to see at least where the story ends off, at least for this first season, with it, if that brings any solace. But that's just my personal opinion. Again, it's all opinion. Nobody's right or wrong in that scenario. But I think that at the end of the day, this episode did more for me to bring it back into center field here and for me to be like, okay, I get it. You know what I mean? Like, I understand now. Now this makes sense when people are like, using said ability or saying said thing or, performing said action, or like when somebody gets this, like, it makes sense now to me that it's happening.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Get what people are saying now. I think when they're like, you've got to read the manhwa because it does it so much better. My biggest problem with this show has always and still is always like the pacing, the way that they've rolled this story out. It hasn't worked for me, where it's like we're moving to this beat incredibly fast, or moving to this point, or it's like let's skip over this because we like, you know what I mean? There's like A, B, and C, and they have to hit A, B, and C, but there's like actually 9 points in between each of those things that they should hit for you to get this story, but they just don't, or they just can't. So it's like I feel like with something like the manhwa, where they have all the time in the world to flesh out all of those segue or sub points, like those are important to me because those are the things that get me invested. Those are the things that make me care. If I read those things, if I get into those characters, into this world and the story more, by this point, I might want or like, quite frankly, Mori and Mira and Dawi enough to like be invested and like want to know what's going on in the story because I want to know how it affects them. To whereas the anime, I feel like it's been pulling me along at like such a breakneck speed that by the time we got here, it's like, all right, we're here. And it's like, I don't even know where we are. I don't care. I just don't care.
Yeah. I don't know. Gavin, you haven't talked in a while. Go easy. Would you?
Or double down.
Y'all ready for my contribution, okay?
All right. Let it rip.
Jeagle the Beagle, he's not very feeble. Acting like a bald eagle, he's eating all them people. All right, y'all can just end it.
Gavin, normally I would yell at you like really loud, but that actually made me laugh a lot.
You don't want to know how long it took me to come up with that plan in my head while they were arguing.
I literally would like catch you in the corner of my eye as I'm talking, and I'm like, wow, he really looks like he's like in the oven there, but like thinking, and I'm like, he was just baking that up the whole time.
I'm not gonna lie, you were up to something productive while we were having that whole rant, and I'm not gonna lie, I was like this close to just being like, all right, folks, we'll see you next time. I was really close, but
I know y'all were waiting for that.
That was
pretty good. Bravo.
It seemed like it took up a lot of
mental capacity.
Yeah,
I don't have a lot left up there.
Okay,
so
is there anything else left before we end it off?
I'm okay with it. I'll keep on watching.
Yeah.
I think I'm more in the boat where it's like they gave me a little something. There's only an episode or two left. It can be in the presence of Lord Haven for a little bit. That's what I'll say. Just a smidgen.
Okay, fair enough, man.
I'm really riding this horse right now. It's just fucking going.
It was fine. I don't mind it. Anyway, folks, those are our thoughts on The God of High School, episode 11. Very different opinions and stuff like that. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. As always, make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, hitting the notification bell, sharing with your friends, and commenting your thoughts down below. What did you think of this episode? What do you think of The God of High School? And what did you think about our discussion? Be nice. But until next time, we'll catch you on the flip. Peace.
Later.
Peace.
Hey, hey, you know what it is, dog. Ninjas are samurais, blazing the kunais. Find me in the leaf of the cloud, screaming out Bankai. We just some ghouls though, who like seeing parts fly.